For 10 years, my job description was simple: good wife. It was a role I auditioned for, won, and performed with methodical precision. My name is Kylie. I'm 35, and until last Tuesday, I thought my life was a testament to hard work and sacrifice paying off. When William and I got married a decade ago, he was 28 and I was 25. He had charisma and ambition. I had a budding landscape design business and a willingness to put his dreams first. We wanted a home, a real one with a yard and space for a future we talked about endlessly. So I took on a second job, bartending on weekends, pouring every spare dollar into a down payment while he focused on climbing the sales ladder. 2 years later, we bought it. Not a starter home, but the home. A beautiful 2-story colonial with an old detached garage I dreamed of turning into my design studio. That dream lasted about 6 months. William's parents, Deborah and Tatum, had a financial setback. It was Deborah, of course, who made the suggestion. "It would be such a comfort to have family close," she'd said, her eyes scanning our backyard. William, who hates confrontation more than anything, saw it as the perfect solution, so my studio fund became the Granny Flat Fund. I oversaw the renovation myself, picking out the flooring and the accessible shower fixtures, creating a perfect little haven for them right on our property. For the past 5 years, they've lived there, rent-free. My father-in-law, Tatum, is 65 and quiet. He just follows Deborah's lead. But Deborah, who will be 60 this year, has always treated my home like a hotel she has a few complaints about. Last Sunday was a perfect example. We were having our weekly family dinner, a tradition she insisted upon. I'd made roasted chicken her favorite. "It's a bit dry, dear," she announced after her first bite, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "You have to be careful not to overcook poultry." I smiled tightly. "I'll keep that in mind, Deborah." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my simple black dress. "Is that new?" "It's a little snug, isn't it?" I felt William's knee brush against mine under the table, a silent plea to let it go. He never defended me, he just managed the fallout. "Mom, tell Kylie about the garden club's trip," he said, smoothly changing the subject. And just like that, I was expected to swallow the criticism and move on. It was the price of peace in our home, my home. The first crack in the foundation appeared on Tuesday. I was gathering laundry when I checked the pockets of William's jeans. Tucked inside was a folded receipt. My blood went cold. It was from Colette's Bistro, a ridiculously expensive French restaurant downtown we'd only been to once for our 5th anniversary. The date on the receipt was from the previous Thursday, the night he'd told me he was working late with a client. The total was over $300. It was a dinner for 2, complete with a bottle of champagne. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach all day. I told myself there had to be an explanation. It was a client. It had to be. But the lie felt thin and brittle, even in my own head. That night, I waited. William came home, kissed my cheek, and complained about traffic. He talked about a deal he was closing, his eyes bright with the thrill of a sale. He was a good liar, charismatic, convincing. He showered before bed, same as always. The sound of the water running was a muffled roar, a countdown timer. My hands were shaking as I picked his phone up from the nightstand. I never checked his phone. It felt like a violation, a line I'd never wanted to cross. But the receipt from Colette's was a splinter in my mind, and I had to dig it out. His passcode was his birthday. Of course it was. I opened his messages, my heart pounding against my ribs. There were texts from his buddies, emails from work, and then I saw it. A thread, just a few lines down, pinned to the top. The contact name wasn't a man's name. It wasn't a client. It was just 2 words and an emoji that made my vision swim. Lexi. My thumb hovered over the name, a portal to a world I wasn't supposed to know existed. The shower was still running. I had minutes. I tapped open the thread. It was months of them. Pictures of her smiling over a glass of wine at Colette's Bistro. selfies in her car with captions like thinking of you, inside jokes about his colleagues, complaints about his workload, and love. So much sickening, saccharine love. Miss your face, he'd sent last week. Can't wait to have you all to myself, she'd replied. My stomach churned, but the shock was quickly hardening into something cold and sharp. I scrolled up, back, looking for the beginning, and that's when I found it. A group chat. The name was innocuous, weekend plans. The participants were William, Lexi, and Deborah. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on it. It was a wasteland of my life, narrated by the three people I thought were my family. Deborah. Kylie's making that dry chicken again Sunday. Maybe you two should just go out. Lexi. Oh, we don't want to be rude. I can handle one bad meal for my man. William. It's not that bad, just bland, like everything else. I scrolled further. There were pictures of Lexi with William's arm around her, sent only to this group. There were discussions about my work schedule, my moods, my choice of paint for the living room. Deborah was the ringleader, encouraging them, validating their affair as if it were a noble cause. A man needs to be inspired, she'd written 2 weeks ago. It's not his fault if his wife lets herself go. A single hot tear escaped and slid down my cheek. It felt like acid. I wiped it away furiously. As I read about their plans for a weekend trip to a vineyard, a memory surfaced with such clarity it felt like a physical blow. 8 years ago, I had a binder filled with plans for a 6-week backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. It was my dream before William became my dream. We were saving for the house and he'd sat me down, his expression earnest. This is our future, Kai. Once we're settled, we can go anywhere. But right now, we need to focus. So I'd canceled my plans, sold my gear, and poured that money into our joint savings account. I'd traded my adventure for his stability, and he'd just given my adventure to someone else. The water shut off. I closed the apps, wiped the screen on my shirt, and placed the phone back on the nightstand exactly as I'd found it. I was lying on my side, facing away from him, when he came out of the bathroom. You asleep? He whispered, sliding into bed. I didn't move. No. He wrapped an arm around me, his hand resting on my stomach. His skin was warm and damp. I had to fight every instinct to recoil. Tired? He asked. I waited a beat. William? I said, my voice unnervingly steady. Who is Lexi? His body went rigid. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. What are you talking about? I found a receipt from Colette's. I saw your phone. I rolled over to face him. The bedside lamp cast his face in shadows, but I could see the panic in his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in 10 years, my charismatic, talkative husband had nothing to say. He finally broke, the words tumbling out in a pathetic rush. It was an old high school thing. She was recently divorced. They just reconnected. It meant nothing. The usual script. I let him finish, my expression unreadable. When he was done, panting slightly from the effort of his lies, he looked at me, searching for a reaction. It's just, she gets me, Kylie. Like you used to. The blame. The final predictable twist of the knife. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at him. Get out of the bed, I said quietly. Go sleep on the couch. The next evening was Wednesday, which wasn't a family dinner night, but Deborah called to say she'd made a casserole and was bringing it over. A peace offering, I was sure, orchestrated by William. I played my part, setting the table while he hovered uselessly in the kitchen. Deborah swept in, placing the dish on the counter with a triumphant smile. I know how tired you must be, dear, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We ate in near silence. William kept shooting me desperate looks. I ignored him, pushing food around my plate. Finally, Deborah couldn't stand it anymore. She put her fork down with a clatter. "You know, Kylie," she began, her tone condescendingly gentle, "marriage is hard work. Sometimes people drift apart. William is a good man, but he has needs." She looked from me to her son, a proud, knowing smile on her face. He deserves someone who makes him happy. I looked up, first at William, who was staring at his plate, then at her. The architect of my humiliation, sitting at my table, in my house. A strange calm washed over me. The path forward was suddenly, brilliantly clear. I leaned forward and whispered, the words barely audible, "You're right." The fog of betrayal began to lift the next morning, replaced by a crystalline, cold clarity. For 10 years, I had managed this house, this marriage, this family. I had been the project manager of our lives. Now I had a new project: demolition. My first call on Thursday morning was to Caleb Patterson. He's a family attorney who has been my friend since college, long before William was in the picture. I met him at his office, a sterile downtown space that felt a million miles away from my carefully curated home. "I need divorce papers," I said, sitting across from his large oak desk. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel the urge to. "And I need an eviction notice." Caleb, who is usually all warm smiles and easy jokes, leaned forward, his expression serious. "An eviction notice for who, Kylie?" "Deborah and Tatum Jordan." He blinked, processing. "Their tenants?" "Their residents." "In a granny flat I paid to build on property that is solely in my name. They pay no rent. They have no lease. I had checked the deed to our house last night. I'd made the down payment with money from my second job and an inheritance from my grandmother. William's name was on the mortgage, but the title was mine, a small, forgotten detail from a decade ago that was now my salvation." Caleb nodded slowly, the legal gears turning in his head. "Okay, that simplifies things. A standard 30-day notice to vacate should be sufficient. As for the divorce, are you sure this is what you want?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice flat. "He's been having an affair with his high school girlfriend. His mother has been helping him." The look on Caleb's face was all the validation I needed. It wasn't pity. It was a quiet, simmering anger on my behalf. "I'll get the documents drawn up," he said. "Just tell me when you want them." That afternoon, I started phase 2. I found William in the living room, where he'd taken up residence on the couch. He looked pathetic, surrounded by wrinkled cushions. "Deborah's birthday is next month," I announced from the doorway. He looked up, startled. "She's turning 60. I think we should throw her a surprise party. A big one." His eyes widened with a mixture of confusion and pathetic, hopeful relief. This, he thought, was me trying. This was me making an effort to fix things. "Yeah?" he said, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, Kai, that's a great idea. She'd love that." "Good," I said, turning to leave. "I'll handle everything." The next phone call was the hardest. My sister Zella and I hadn't spoken in almost a year. Our relationship had withered under the shade of my marriage. I was always busy, always hosting, always putting the Jordans first. Zella, who is 2 years younger than me, had called me out on it, and I, in my role as the good wife, had chosen them over her. She answered on the third ring. "Kylie?" Her voice was wary, laced with surprise. "Hey, Zell," I said, my throat suddenly tight. I know it's been a while." "A while is one way to put it," she said, the hurt still fresh. "Is everything okay?" The dam I'd been so carefully constructing inside me cracked. "No," I whispered. "No, it's not. William is cheating on me." I told her everything. The texts, the group chat, Deborah's involvement. I didn't cry, but my voice shook with the effort of keeping it together. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a horrible moment, I thought she was going to say, "I told you so." Instead, she said, "I'm so sorry, Kai. What are you going to do?" "I'm leaving him," I said. "But first I'm throwing his mother a birthday party." I explained the plan, the beautiful, terrible, intricate trap I was building. Another pause. Then a slow smile crept into her voice. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you evil genius. What do you need from me?" That night, pretending everything was normal was the hardest part. I made dinner. I let William eat at the kitchen island instead of the couch. He was practically giddy, telling me about his day, believing my party planning was an olive branch. He thought he'd weathered the storm. Later, I was walking past the living room to go upstairs. He was on the phone, his back to me, his voice low. I stopped, hidden by the shadow of the doorway. "No, it's fine, I promise," he was saying. "She's coming around. She's even planning this huge party for my mum." "Yeah, I know. It's crazy." He laughed, a soft, intimate sound that made my skin crawl. "Just be patient a little longer. We'll move into the main house once this all blows over." The next few weeks became a blur of invoices and RSVPs. My days were spent designing serene garden spaces for clients, while my nights were dedicated to orchestrating the most elaborate emotional ambush I could conceive. The guest list was my first masterpiece. I invited everyone. William's aunts, who always told me how lucky he was to have such a patient wife. His old college friends, who saw me as the steadfast anchor to his charming chaos. Deborah's entire bridge club, a gaggle of women who had witnessed years of my polite smiles in the face of her subtle digs. Each RSVP felt like another soldier enlisting in my private army, even if they didn't know it yet. Zella became my late-night co-conspirator. "Are you sure you can handle this?" she asked during one of our calls, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "Seeing all of them, pretending." "It's a lot." "It's just event planning, Zell," I told her, scrolling through catering menus. "And I'm very good at it. The theme is Queen for a Day. I'm getting a balloon arch that literally spells out Queen Deborah." She let out a snort of laughter. "You are terrifying. I love it." My fury was a powerful motivator. It fueled me as I booked the best caterer in town, the one Deborah always sighed over when she saw it mentioned in the local paper. It guided my hand as I ordered a 3-tiered cake, a confection of lemon and elderflower so extravagant it was obscene. I curated a playlist of all her favorite songs from the 70s. Every detail was a weapon, lovingly polished and aimed directly at her pride. William, meanwhile, was a puppy I'd let back in the house. He was still sleeping on the couch, but he saw the party planning as his path to redemption. He'd offer to help, to pick things up, to run errands. "Just tell me what you need, Kai," he'd say, his eyes full of a desperate, unearned hope. I'd smile and give him a list of meaningless tasks, picking up napkins, confirming the rental company's address, just enough to make him feel involved, to keep him from looking too closely at the bigger picture. About a week before the party, Deborah wandered over from the granny flat while I was on the phone with the florist, confirming an order for 6 dozen white roses. She stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, listening with a pinched expression. When I hung up, she shook her head, a familiar look of condescending concern on her face. "Kylie, dear, I hope you're not overspending on this. It's a lovely gesture, but simple is classy. We wouldn't want people to think we're being gauche." We. As if she had contributed a single dollar to the roof over her head, let alone this party. I gave her the warmest, most reassuring smile I could muster. "Don't you worry about a thing, Deborah," I said sweetly. "Consider it an investment in the family's future." The final piece of confirmation I needed came 3 days before the party. William had started leaving his iPad on the kitchen counter in the mornings. It was a small act of trust, a sign that he thought we were moving past his mistake. I was making coffee when a notification lit up the screen. He'd changed her contact name, a laughably clumsy attempt at subterfuge. It was no longer Lexi, but Lex Love. The message preview was right there, impossible to miss. Counting down the hours. Can't wait to make that house our home. We'll have to redecorate the living room first thing. See you June 1st. XOXO. June 1st, 5 days after the party. They had a date, a move-in date for my house. I stared at the screen, the ceramic mug in my hand growing cold. The last flicker of doubt, the tiny, stupid voice that whispered maybe I was overreacting, was extinguished. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a hostile takeover of my life. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The party wasn't just going to be a surprise, it was going to be a closing ceremony. The final days leading up to the party were a masterclass in domestic tension. The air in our house was thick with unspoken truths. Our 10th wedding anniversary fell on the Thursday before the party. I woke up that morning wondering if he would remember. He didn't. He complained about the lumpy couch cushions, grabbed a protein bar from the pantry, and left for work without so much as a word. I didn't say anything either. Acknowledging it would have felt like begging for scraps. Later that afternoon, Deborah caught me in the hallway. She was holding a paint swatch, a ghastly shade of beige she called Champagne Wish. I was just thinking, she said, holding it up against my grey wall. This room gets such lovely light, but the color is so dreary. When things settle down, I might hire a decorator, brighten the place up a bit, for my future living space. She said it so casually, as if she were discussing the weather. She was already mentally moving her furniture into my living room. I just smiled. That's an interesting idea, Deborah. We'll have to see. That was the final push I needed. The next morning, I had a security company come out. I told William it was because of a few break-ins in the neighborhood. Just a simple upgrade, I said. A few cameras, a better alarm system. For peace of mind. He barely looked up from his iPad, just grunted his approval. He was too consumed by his own little drama to pay attention to mine. I had them install small, discrete cameras covering the front door, the living room, and the kitchen. I could access the live feed from my phone. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, while I was at the office pretending to review a planting schematic, I got a motion alert. I opened the app, my heart hammering. I watched as William unlocked our front door and ushered Lexi inside. She was exactly as I'd imagined from her photos. Bubbly, blonde, and radiating a practiced charm. I watched her run a hand over my marble countertop. I watched her laugh as she kicked off her shoes and curled up on my sofa in the exact spot I always sat. She looked right at home. I saved the footage. My final project was the centerpiece of the party's decor. A massive corkboard I'd titled Deborah's 60 Years of Memories. I spent hours curating it. To any casual observer, it was a loving tribute. There was a photo of William and me on our honeymoon in Italy, smiling into the camera. I remembered that trip clearly. It was the week I realized he expected me to handle all the logistics, from currency exchange to dinner reservations. There was a picture of the whole family on the day we broke ground on the granny flat, my arm slung around a beaming Deborah. She'd complained that morning that my work boots were tracking mud on her precious son's lawn. I included photos of every holiday, every birthday, every forced family gathering where I had smiled and played the good wife, while my mother-in-law catalogued my failures. It was a beautiful, smiling, perfect lie, and I couldn't wait for everyone to see it. The day before the party, the weight of it all finally hit me. I was at my desk, staring blankly at a blueprint, when the composure I'd maintained for weeks just shattered. My vision blurred, and a sob escaped before I could stop it. I quickly ducked my head, hoping no one had noticed. Kylie? I looked up. It was Elliot Kennedy, my co-worker. He's a talented architect, quiet and observant, someone I'd always had a friendly but professional relationship with. He was standing by my desk, his expression etched with concern. "Hey," I said, hastily wiping my eyes. "Sorry, just a long week." He didn't buy it. He pulled up a chair and sat down, his voice low. "It's been more than a week." He paused, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Listen, I don't want to overstep, but my brother-in-law is on William's sales team. I've heard things for a while now. I just didn't know how to tell you." The day of the party arrived, bright and unseasonably warm. My house, which had felt like a cold, silent courtroom for weeks, was suddenly alive. It was filled with the clinking of glasses and waves of laughter from people who had no idea they were attending a public execution. I moved through the crowd, a perfect hostess in a simple navy dress, topping up wine glasses and accepting compliments on the catering. I wasn't faking my smile. It was genuine, fueled by an adrenaline so pure it felt like joy. I was glowing from the inside out with the promise of imminent spectacular justice. Deborah was in her element. I had set up a comfortable wicker chair for her on the patio, right beneath the shimmering gold balloon arch that spelled out Queen Deborah. She held court from her throne, accepting gifts and inclining her head like visiting royalty as friends and family paid their respects. "Oh, you shouldn't have," she'd say, while her eyes assessed the value of the gift. William drifted at the edges of the party, a drink in one hand, his phone in the other. During the toasts, when his uncle stood up and spoke warmly about Deborah's strength and character, I watched the bluish glow of a screen illuminate William's face as he smiled down at a text. He was here in body, but his mind was already in his new life, mentally rearranging my furniture with Lexi. Zella caught my eye from across the lawn. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Are you ready?" I smiled back. Born ready. It was a relief to have one person in this sea of oblivious faces who knew the truth. One person who was on my side. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the backyard. The caterers brought out the cake, the 3-tiered lemon and elderflower masterpiece. I lit the 60 candles myself, their tiny flames dancing in the twilight. Everyone gathered around, a chorus of off-key voices singing "Happy Birthday" to the woman who had systematically undermined my marriage and my home. She blew out the candles in one triumphant puff to a round of applause. She looked radiant. She looked happy. It was perfect. After the cake was cut and served, I stepped onto the patio and tapped a spoon against my wine glass. The chatter died down. All eyes turned to me. William looked up from his phone, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes at being interrupted. "I just want to say a few words," I began, my voice clear and steady. "Deborah, 60 years is an incredible milestone. You've built a family, a legacy, and as your daughter-in-law for the last 10 years, I've learned so much from you about what family truly means." Deborah preened, placing a hand on her heart. "I wanted to make sure you both had a gift to remember this occasion," I continued, my eyes locking onto William, then his mother. "Something truly special." I walked over to a small table where 2 elegantly wrapped boxes sat. They were identical, wrapped in silver paper with navy blue ribbons. I picked them up and walked toward the guest of honor and her son. The crowd murmured appreciatively. I handed the first box to William. I placed the second in Deborah's lap. They looked at me, then at the gifts, their faces a mixture of surprise and smug satisfaction. They thought this was it, the grand gesture, the final act of forgiveness from the good wife. I stepped back, my smile never wavering. "Go on, open them." As their fingers fumbled with the ribbons, I leaned in, my voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Your lives are about to change." William tore his open first, eager and entitled as always. He lifted the lid, and his smile froze, melting into a mask of disbelief. Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper, was a thick stack of legal documents. On top was the petition for dissolution of marriage. My signature was already on it, a crisp, decisive blue scrawl at the bottom. A gasp rippled through the guests closest to him. Deborah, slower and more deliberate, carefully untied her ribbon. She lifted her own set of documents from the box. It was a formal, notarized eviction notice, giving her and Tatum Jordan 30 days to vacate the premises. Her face went slack with shock, the color draining from her cheeks. The paper trembled in her hand. Before either of them could speak, I took the wireless microphone from the small sound system I'd rented. The silence in the backyard was absolute. As I was saying, I began, my voice amplified, calm, and resonant. I've learned a lot about family. And about happiness. I looked directly at Deborah. Just last week, you told me that William deserves someone who makes him happy. And I've come to realize that you're absolutely right. He does. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. And so do I. My gaze shifted to my husband. William has reconnected with his high school sweetheart, Lexi Wallace. For months, they've been enjoying a secret relationship with the full support and encouragement of his mother. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. Phones were already starting to emerge, small black rectangles held up to capture the unfolding drama. Someone was live streaming on Instagram. I could see the red icon glowing in the twilight. They've been planning their future together, I continued, my voice unwavering. A future in this house. My house. Just then, as if summoned by a playwright with a flair for the dramatic, a figure appeared at the edge of the patio. It was Lexi. She was dressed for a celebration, holding a brightly wrapped gift, a confused but hopeful smile on her face. She was late, walking directly into the blast radius of the bomb I had just detonated. Her smile faltered as she took in the scene, the stunned, silent crowd, William's ashen face, Deborah's open-mouthed horror. I turned the microphone toward her. Lexi, so glad you could make it. We were just talking about you. I gave her a bright, predatory smile. William is all yours now. Good luck living with him now that he has no house. Lexi froze, her gift-laden hands hovering in midair, the dots connected in her eyes, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning panic. That's when Deborah found her voice. She scrambled to her feet, the eviction notice fluttering to the ground. How dare you? She shrieked, her face contorted with rage. After everything we've done for you, you ungrateful little... Ungrateful? A new voice cut through the tension. It was Zella. She stepped forward, standing beside me, a fierce and protective shield. She bought this house. She built your apartment. She cooked your Sunday dinners and bit her tongue every time you insulted her. The only thing my sister is guilty of is giving this family more than it ever deserved. The crowd erupted in murmurs. People were turning to each other, whispering, the narrative I had so carefully maintained for a decade crumbling in seconds. The photo board of memories on the wall suddenly looked different, each smiling picture now tainted with the bitter truth. Deborah, cornered and exposed, fell back on her last resort, manufactured victimhood. Her voice rose to a hysterical pitch. You can't do this. I'm 60 years old. This is elder abuse. I'll sue you. I'll sue you for everything you have. Deborah's shriek hung in the air long after the first guests started making hasty, awkward exits. The party dissolved in a matter of minutes, a chaotic retreat of averted eyes and whispered apologies. William stood frozen, the divorce papers limp in his hand, his face a canvas of pure panic. He hates confrontation, and I had just served him the apocalypse on a silver platter. Lexi, pragmatic and clearly seeing her dream of a colonial home evaporate, was the first to move. She dropped her gift on a table, turned without a word, and practically ran to her car. William, jolted into action, stumbled after her, launching into a desperate, low-voiced negotiation. Tatum simply helped his wife, now sobbing hysterically, back to the granny flat. The only person who remained was Zella. She helped me gather discarded plates and glasses in the wreckage of the party, the silence between us comfortable and solid. When the caterers had packed up and driven away, she poured 2 large glasses of wine, and we sat on the steps of the patio, looking out at the quiet, empty yard. "So," she said, taking a sip. "That was something." "I feel light," I admitted. "Is that weird?" "No," she said, bumping her shoulder against mine. "It's about time." The legal threat came 2 days later. A letter from a lawyer arrived via courier, full of blustering accusations of wrongful eviction and emotional distress inflicted upon a vulnerable senior. It claimed Deborah had a verbal agreement for lifetime residency. I laughed, took a picture of it, and sent it to Caleb. His response was swift. He sent a letter back to her lawyer, along with a copy of the property deed, which was solely in my name. He also included a short, time-stamped clip from my security camera footage taken the day before the party. It showed Deborah in my living room, holding up a paint swatch and telling me I might hire a decorator for my future living space. Caleb told me her lawyer called him less than an hour after receiving the package. The threats stopped. There were no grounds for a lawsuit, and the footage made her look like a scheming opportunist, not a vulnerable victim. William and Deborah, as expected, crashed with Lexi. Her charming 1-bedroom apartment became their temporary refuge. The fallout was swift and, from what I gathered, brutal. William sent me a string of furious texts a week later, blaming me for ruining his life. Tucked between the accusations were complaints that Lexi didn't understand the pressure he was under, and that his mother was driving them both crazy. Apparently, the reality of living with a broke, entitled man-child and his demanding mother in a small space was not the romantic dream Lexi had signed up for. A few weeks after the party, a text lit up my phone. It was from Elliot. "Just wanted to see how you're doing." I smiled. "I'm doing okay," I typed back. His reply came instantly. "Good. When you feel up to it, I'd like to take you out for a coffee." Or something stronger. My heart did a little flutter, a feeling so foreign I almost didn't recognize it. It was nice to be asked, to be seen as just me, not as a wife or a caretaker. "I'm not ready for that yet," I wrote, my thumb hovering over the screen. "But thank you. I'd like that someday." On the 30th day, a moving truck pulled up to the granny flat. I watched from the kitchen window as they loaded up Deborah and Tatum's belongings. William was there, his shoulders slumped in defeat, lifting boxes with a grim reluctance. Deborah shot one last venomous glare toward my house before climbing into the passenger seat of William's car. And then they were gone. The silence they left behind was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. That night, I cooked dinner in my kitchen, alone and barefoot, with a glass of wine in my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I belonged.